Okay, let's get started. First off, I'm really excited about this video because we're going to be doing weapon switching. Basically, we're going to take our current project, which so far we have characters that can pick up weapons, add them to their inventory, and when they pick up the weapon, it spawns into the hand, and they're different weapons. But right now, you don't have a way to switch in your inventory. It exists. It's there. Pressing Q, you can see that. We have 3 weapons in our inventory, but we have no way to switch between them, and that's what we're going to do. And why I'm excited about this is because it's really we're gonna actually be programming. I mean, we're gonna be doing some really neat stuff. And if you think about this, if you can figure this out, you can be a programmer. If you get these concepts, and don't let anybody tell you that blueprints, it's not programming. I do both, and yes, it's programming. It's significantly easier or less error prone. But if you can do this, you can program. So don't listen to anybody who says otherwise. Let's go ahead and start by going into our. Well, we're going to go into our character, but first we need to get access to our input from our mouse, and that's going to be our scroll wheel. So go over to your settings, project settings, and then go into your input right here. Okay. What you want to do is you want to do 2 inputs. So hit the plus button twice, 1, 2, and then we're going to name them. We're going to call it Increment. Move that over. Increment, Inventory, and Decrement. Basically make it go up and make it go down. And then we got to set what we're going to do. So for increment, go over to the mouse, drop down here, and we're going to say mouse wheel up. Decrement, go over to the mouse, and mouse wheel down. Now we've associated these event names, then we can call them in our main character. So define your characters, just select on this, go to edit blueprint, open blueprint editor. Okay, and let's plop those in here. Let's call what we just made. So increment inventory and decrement inventory. Okay, so I'm going to be referring to my notes because it does get complex. So what we're going to do, let's start out with our main inventory because that's what we're going to be working on. We're going to get it. Okay, that means we're not adding anything to it at this moment. We're just referring to it. So when you do that, you don't need to set right now. We want to get its length. Okay, and so there's a function for that. It's pretty much in every programming language has something like this, and it works with an array. And remember, an array is just a collection of things. Think of it as a backpack of things, but think of a highly organized backpack that has spots in sequential order, right? Like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and it just keeps going as you add things into it. And we always start at 0. Remember that. So that's what this is. The length is telling me how many things are in the backpack. This is really screws a lot of people up. So think about this. Inventory start counting at 0, right? So it's 0. So the first item we picked up is item 0. The second item we pick up is item 1. The third item we pick up is item 2. So 0, 1, and 2. That is what they're listed as. But its length would equal 3. Okay? So we're always going to have to keep that in our heads when we're working with this, or we're going to screw ourselves over. Okay? So the length, when we have 3 items in our inventory, is going to be 3. That last item in the inventory is going to be item number 2 in the inventory index, okay? And so we're going to have to make a variable that keeps track of where we're at on the inventory, okay? Because it doesn't know. It's dumb data. We're working with dumb data. We got to make it smart data. So let's go ahead and add a variable, and we'll call it, say, inventory index. And we're going to make it percenter, and we're going to make it an integer, okay? And that's an integer, a solid 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We don't want to float, which would be like 1.3, 1.4. We never ever want to do that. When you need an integer, use an integer. Don't use a float, and vice versa. Use the right tool for the right job. Okay? So first thing we want to check when we're incrementing our inventory is that we want to know if its length is greater than 1. Because if we don't have more than one item in our inventory, we don't want to be calling a bunch of code, and nothing needs to happen. So to check our length, to make sure it's greater than 1, all we do is we drag off here, and it's spitting. You can already tell it's spitting off an integer. And we want to bring that off here and say greater than, and then integer greater than integer. Okay, and the integer you put in the box is the one you're saying it's greater than. So we want to check if it's greater than 1. And it spits out a bool. So it's going to say, hey, is this greater than 1? And it's going to say yes or no. Okay. So if we had 2 items in our inventory, it would say that it is greater than 1, and then we can proceed. So to do that check, we're going to do what's in Unreal calls it a branch. Other programming language would say it's an if statement. If this is true or if something is not. So what you do, you can do one of two things. You can press B and then left click, and it's going to pop up your branch, or you can right click and type branch, if I can spell, type branch, and that little symbol pops up, and you can press enter. A third way, I believe, is you can type if, because it's acting like an if statement, and press enter, and you're going to get your branch. There's 3 ways to do it. I recommend doing whatever you like. Doesn't matter. B and click is it's easiest for me. Anyway, connect that up there. Okay, so if our length is greater than 1, we're going to proceed. If it's false, we don't want to do anything. Okay. So what we want to do next is we want to do another check, and this is where thing gets a little bit confusing. What we want to do, we're going to pull off our inventory index. Okay. And what makes it confusing, we haven't set our inventory index, so referring to an inventory index before you've done anything to it can get a little funny, but you have to think backwards when you're programming sometimes. Okay, so we'll get there and we'll step through it. It'll make a lot more sense. So basically we want to check if our inventory index is greater than or equal to a certain value. Okay, and then we're going to make a decision, a yes or no decision based off of that. So what we want to do is we want to get our length. Okay, we got our weapon inventory. We're going to drag off of here, and we are going to check our weapon inventory minus an integer. If that length minus 1, okay, we want to know that. So we want to say our inventory index is greater than or equal to the length of our inventory minus 1. Now think about why we might need to do that. And I had to write myself a note to make sure I get this right. And my note says, if your index is greater than the length of your inventory, that means that you've overshot the length of your inventory, and you're going to need to come back to 0. So to make this thought make a little more sense, I'm going to go ahead and start the next branch, okay, so you can see what I'm talking about. So press B, left click, drag this over here, okay. Remember, we only want to do anything if this is greater than 1, so we're going to connect your true over here, okay. And if this statement is true, we want to do, for the first time, we're going to set our inventory index, and we're going to set it to 0. And now you have kind of a complete thought as to what's going on. If it takes you 20, 30 minutes of just staring at this to get it, do it. Because this is where the stuff you need to stop and think, and don't feel like you're stupid for doing it, because I had to do it when I made this tutorial, and I'm still referring to the notes. It's a hard thing to think about, but it's simple once you get it. A little light bulb will kick off. So let's step through it. So our weapon inventory, its overall length minus 1. So if our inventory index is greater than or equal to the length of our inventory minus 1, and we have to do the minus 1, because remember, arrays start counting from 0. So if it's greater than or equal to our length of our inventory minus 1, if that's true, we've overshot our the correct number to call an item in our inventory. And if we've overshot that, that means we need to circle back around and come to 0, because when you're dealing with the scroll wheel, it's gonna increment, and then when it gets to a high enough increment, it needs to come back to the next weapon. So let's say you got 3 items in your inventory. Let's say you got like we have, I'm trying to think of the name. So you got an AK-47, an AR-15, and a submachine gun that I don't know the name of. Okay, so your first weapon, AK-47, you increment, you do the scroll wheel up. So you want to go to the next one, which is an AR-15. You want to increment again from the AR-15 to the submachine gun. Okay, you want to go from the submachine gun. No, you don't have another item, so what do you need to do? You need to go back to item 0, which is going to be your AK-47. Okay, so you loop back, and that's this scenario that we're playing out in the code so far. The length of our inventory minus 1. So let's think about that. Let's think we have 3 items in our inventory. Okay, the weapons I listed. And they're listed as 0, AK-47, 1, AR-15, 2 is going to be our submachine gun, okay? So if 2 is our submachine gun, that means our length is 3, okay? And I'm having a tough time even spitting this out. So if the length minus 1, if your weapon index is pointing at 3, that's already more numbers than you have assigned to your array. Remember, because you only have 0, 1, and 2. You only have 0, AK, 1, AR-15, 2, submachine gun. 3 is nothing, because we don't have another weapon yet. Eventually, it'll be something if we add another weapon in there. But right now, we don't have a 3. So what it's doing is checking, dude, are you at a 3? Are you greater than or equal to the inventory index minus 1? If you are, then you need to go ahead and set the inventory index to 0. This is something, just sit and think about it. Okay, some people already probably have the concept. Me, I'm the type of guy I got to sit and think about these things. Now, if we're not cycling back around, we need to take our inventory index and we need to increment it. Okay. So this would be, let's say we're at 0 and we picked up our first item and we want to, or we already have our first item and we want to go to our second item, which would be index number 1. Then we need to increment it, go up to the next one. And so there's a shortcut in C++, which is, by the way, blueprints under the hood is C++. Just drag off of your inventory index and literally type ++, and it's going to call a macro, and it's going to be called increment int. Okay, and so what this does, and there's various ways you could do this. You could say inventory index. You could say +1. You could do it that way, but I like the shorthand ++. And even better, a little history here. This is where the name of C++ came from. Okay, so you had the C coding language, and then when you basically what they're saying is with C++, it's the next best thing, right? So it's C incremented by 1 is C++. That's where this comes from. Just a little bit of nerd history for you. So anyway, we're incrementing our integer if our inventory index, if this solution here is not met. Okay, so we're not wrapping back around. So once we increment it, we need to set it. Okay. So if you didn't set it, all you would be saying is inventory index plus, and then nothing. So you have to actually set that value, and how you do that. Remember, this is the data that's actually flowing through, and this is the signal flow that tells it, when and how to happen, or when to happen, I should say, in the sequence. Then you plug it into there. So that right there increments your inventory. Okay, so after we do that, what do we got to do? Okay, so we have these two values. It tells us what our inventory index is going to be, And then, so we know where we're supposed to be in the array, but we need to actually call that item in the array. We need to tell it to come out, basically, okay? So to do that, get your weapon inventory, okay? And you want to type in get. Another function that's in pretty much most coding languages that are using arrays. And really, to add further confusion, this isn't a true array. It's more like a vector, which is confusing because C++ has two types of vectors, a vector as in a coordinate, and also dynamic arrays, which means you can add and subtract a memory to it in runtime. And so this is acting like a vector, but Unreal's made its own version of that, and that's what we're using here. And it's lightweight, and what I mean by that is it's very efficient in how it handles memory allocation and things like that. Anyway, too much inventory or too much stuff I know, but it's handy to know. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to get a thing out of it. We want to get this over here, but as you see, there's only one plug. So do we want to get? You try to hook up here, and then you try to hook up here. It's kicking the other one out, so that's a problem. You're like, oh no, what do I do? It's no problem. You just need to reference this, and when you reference something, we're not setting it, we're getting it. So you simply get off here and say get. I want to get that inventory index, and then there you go. Okay, so sometimes this can stump you. You're like, you just need to pull it off of here. No big deal. So now that we've gotten it, remember, just getting something doesn't do anything. We need to set something to actually do something. So what you need to do is you need to finally set a variable to spawn it. So if you remember when we picked up our weapon, we did something similar. We called the last index of our array, and it told it to be called here. Once again, we're into this issue where I can't go up here, pull this off of here, drag down. Old me might have done this, and then plug it into here. It's going to kick it out. So you might think, oh no, we've screwed ourselves, because this is where we're going to have to go eventually, right? We need to come down here so that way we can spawn our weapon into our hand, because we've already done this code. It would be stupid to recode all this stuff we've already do. We have a weapon spawning in our hand, so we're going to reuse that. And how we're going to do it, similar to the problem we had back there where we're trying to plug two pins into the same hole, we're going to put a variable there, we're going to set it, and then we're going to get a reference to that variable and plug it in here, okay? So how you do that, multiple ways. You can just right click off here, to be honest. This would probably be the easiest way. See if it does it right. Yeah. Okay, just do that. And what that is, I think it's a reference to class. No, actually, it's my weapon actual master. The way to do it in here, you could click over new variable, and then say during this drop down, you could type weapon actual master, and then drop down to the class reference, this purple one right here, and that's one way to pull it up. I just did the shortcut and right clicked off there because it already knew based off of the weapon inventory what types were in there. It already knew. Okay, because in C++ you can only have one type of thing in your array, and I'm going to use the term array just because that's what Unreal does and it's easier to say. So you can only have one type of thing in your array, so it already knows that it's going to need to be this weapon actual master. And then we're going to set that value. Okay, so basically both of these pins are going to come off of here and set that value. Okay, and then we're going to compile, save, file, save all. Now, we got to name our variables. Let's not get sloppy. So that last one that I almost set, new variable 1, we can delete that. That was just me explaining things. Click on this right here and press F2, and you can say, I don't know, weapon to spawn. Okay, and now it's got its name populated here. Okay, so even though we've got this guy up here setting our value, we need to find an efficient way than getting down here. And no, I'm not going to drag a damn line all the way down the screen and do that. That would be That would be insane to me. What we're going to do, we're going to use the same thing. You know how we were replicating variables by setting this and doing this run on server stuff? Well, these things can also be used for navigating through jumping around your screen easily. So basically, I'm going to make a connection point, and it's just going to be a plain old custom event. Okay, we're not going to set any replications. So say, you know what, and since go to your destination, okay, and right click and type custom event. Add custom event, and oh man, I had a decent name for this in, what did I call it in my notes? To spawn weapon, and that makes sense. So type in here. You can do it up here too. If you don't fat finger the keys. Okay, to spawn weapon. Okay, and here, look over here in this corner. You don't need to replicate or do anything, because remember, we already set up our spawning replication in the last video. We went all over that stuff. So all you need to do is drag it down here. Okay. So remember, when you create something like this, compile, save. When you make something like this, then you actually have to call it, right? Because it doesn't know what time is this thing even called. So go back up to your top point here and just say to spawn weapon. So I created this thing you're seeing right here. You just made that when you did custom event. Enter here, and now compile, save. Now you've linked these two up. So when you double click here, it shoots you all the way down here. That was all automated. That just happened. And now it knows to come down here. What it doesn't know, however, is it doesn't know what weapon to spawn, because what would happen is you would come down here and you would start over here. Instead of having your input, your interact button start here and go into this macro we made, it's going to start here. It's going to disregard that junk right there. The problem is it's going to come down to your weapon inventory and it's going to spawn the last index. All that work we just got done doing would be negated. It wouldn't matter. We need to do is come down here and get our weapon to spawn variable and get it. And now this is going to be what this is going to spawn, and you simply just drag it down here and plug it in here. Okay, do you get what I just did? Here. Okay, we set the weapon to spawn here. I come down here, and then it's pulling it down here. Okay, it's getting it. You know, we're not setting it. That's our reference to it right here. Okay, so now what about this? We just broke our weapon interact. No, we didn't. All we're going to do, I'm going to just drag this over to the side here. We're going to just set the variable. We're going to set this variable over here. We're just going to give us a little room. Weapon to spawn. We're going to set it, okay? So we're fixing our problem here. And we're just plugging the get right here. Connect these arrows up and think about what we just did. Okay? This is when we pick up our weapon, our interact, our E key. It does some calculations here to pick up the weapon, and basically it does the calculation to figure out what. Here, I'll just click on it. It does all this stuff. It adds it to your inventory and all that. Back to our event graph. I double clicked on it. That's how I went in there. And basically, it gets our inventory all set up, and then we get our last index here, and it sets it. And then it calls it here. But now we can reuse all of this code where we set the replication of the spawning. We can just reuse it. Okay, that's called being efficient. That's what programming is all about. You should always be looking for ways to do stuff like this. So think about it if you have to for a minute. It's easy to see where custom events are going, but it's hard to say where they came from. So you can make yourself a little note here and it's comment it out and say from increment and later decrement inventory. Okay. Come on. There we go. Compile, save, file, save all. All right. So we might actually have something we can test here now. We increment our inventory, does these checks to see if we even need to. Just double checking my notes. It checks if we even need to. And it comes over here and it checks if we've overlapped our pointer Okay, and here's another thing, and here's to really wrap your head around this. If you already got it, great. But there's somebody out there who's like me who doesn't know, still doesn't understand the concept of what's going on. So what you have to think of, and I just said pointer, and that's what brought this up to my mind. That's really what we're doing in an array. The collection of things in our inventory index is acting like a pointer. So it's deciding, okay, do we want this one, or do we want this one, or do we want that one? Think of it like literally pointing. It's going, do you want to go here? Do you want to go here? Do you want to go there? And that's what a pointer is doing. It's constantly referencing things. In this situation, in the array, which one is it going to be? It's selecting. Okay, so it's acting like a pointer. And so when that pointer gets to the end of the array, it's like, uh-oh, I can't. There's nothing here, and I need to go back. Okay, so basically, I just explained to you a really important thing in programming: pointers. Okay, that's one way in which they're used. You can use them for many other things, but they're commonly used in arrays to select items, to decide, make a choice on what you want. So that's what we've done. Now all this talking, let's actually press play and see what madness we've done. Okay, so let's pick up our AK. Okay, I should increment up. Nothing should happen. That's what we want. We pick up our AR-15, and I should be able to flop up. Oh, look at that. Now, you might be looking at the menu. Shift F1. Windows left, and over here. Okay, there you go. Now, look at the screen where you can actually see where the gun's at, the right screen. So, you're switching between these weapons, and I'm incrementing up. That's what we want. Let's do it with the third weapon, the submachine gun. Okay, it nicely selected it for us when we picked it up, and so we know that's still working. And it should go back to the AR-15, which was the first. And did that just go out of order? Let's double check that. Let's press play. Shift F1. I think I might have found a bug. I'm not sure though. Okay, let's think about the order we picked these up in. AK, AR, submachine gun. The order should maintain that. So I already forgot. Okay, press play one more time. So AR. No. See, that's my problem. I said the wrong. Okay, AK, AR, submachine gun, AR. I think that's wrong. Okay. AK, AR, submachine gun. AK, AR, submachine. Yeah, something's wonky here. Let's look at this again. Let's find out what we did wrong. AK. Got our AK. AR. Submachine gun. It should go back to our AK, but it's going to our AR. What could we have done wrong? You know what it was? We just got done talking about pointers, and what we didn't do, so everything is incrementing is right, but the problem is when we pick up an item, the pointer, it's not being set. It doesn't know where it's at. Okay, so this is great. See, you just got to see me make a mistake and how I debugged it. Okay, and so what we're going to do, we're going to go out of here, and we are going to go into our, so let's see where this happens here. When we go into our weapon pickup macro, okay, and I'm going to do the same thing in our notes because I know I had it working in my notes. Weapon pickup macro. I set it in here somewhere. I'm trying to remember where I set it. Okay. Let's back out. Right here. When we get our weapon here, and then we set it right here, this would be the time where we would need to set our inventory index. Okay, and it's gonna set it to this last index here, like this. Okay, so let's think about this, because I just got stumped on it, but we figured it out. Okay, so the thing we just got done talking about, kick the mic. The thing we just got done talking about, the pointer, it wasn't updating when we picked up a weapon, so it didn't know where it was, and so when then I cycled, it would point to another number that was incorrect. So let's see if this actually fixed it. I'm pretty sure it will. Compile, save, file, save all, press play. Let's try this again. Now let's try to remember. AK, AR, submachine gun. AK, AR, submachine gun. AK, AR, submachine gun. AK, AR, submachine gun. Great. It works on the server. Now for multiplayer hell, let's go to the client and do it. Shift F1. I didn't actually change anything. So Windows, left arrow, select. Let me do the client. He's going to go AK, AR, submachine gun. And we'll run over here. Okay. AK, AR, submachine gun. AK, AR, submachine gun. Great. That works. Do the drop down. What did I just do? Okay, click the run dedicated server and then press play. Shift F1. Window left. Then grab it right here. Okay, we're both on clients. Here's where the money is. AK, I'm pressing E to pick up. AR, submachine gun. AK, AR, submachine gun. AK, AR, submachine gun. AK, AR, submachine gun. Great. We have our our increment is working. That's fantastic. I'm excited. Let's press escape. We're good. Now we got to do the same thing for decrementing our inventory. It's going to be similar but different. So let's not get confused. Let's kind of separate this stuff. Move it up and just drag select all. And then we get our decrement inventory right here. We'll put it right back here. And let me go to my notes for reference so I don't get lost. Okay, so just like the check up here, we still need to do that. We still need to check if our inventory is length. Come on, bud. There we go. We still need to check if this is greater than 1. Make sure you set that to 1. And then tab. Okay. So we still need to check that. I'm just organizing here a little bit. Press B. Select that. Before we do anything. Okay. So we're decrementing. We're going down on our inventory. We need to check if it's greater than 1. If that is false, then we need to, okay, so now we need to worry about, instead of going over our inventory, we need to worry about going, our pointer going over the length. We need to worry about it going under. Okay, so I have my first check. The length is greater than 0. So we'll need to do another check of our inventory index. Get our inventory index. And we need to ask it something. Are you greater than 0? Okay, I'm making sure I got this right. Okay, so do a branch right here. So if our length is greater than 1, we're going to come out of here, true, because we actually want to do something. Okay, so and I have a note here that says it's got to be greater than 0, or you will drop below 0 when you decrement. Okay, this makes sense. So if I try to go, if I'm at 0 already, which is the first weapon I pick up, and I want to go down, it's going to go into -1. We don't want to have that happen. And if it's about to happen, then what we need to do is we need to cycle back around, and we want to get the last item in this index here. Okay, so if the condition is if we are greater than 0, but let's say we are at 0, what do we need to do? We need to get our length, come out of here, -1. Okay, our length -1. And we need to set our inventory index to that. Okay. So let's think about what we just did. And I'm just going to put a little reroute node down here so we can have some organization. Okay. So our length is greater than 1. We know that. If our inventory index is greater than 1, if that is false, that means we're sitting at 0 or somewhere else. If we're somehow able to get this thing to go below 0, or if we're at 0 and we're trying to decrement, go lower, we need to get the length of this weapon inventory -1, because remember, arrays start counting at 0, so and length doesn't start counting at 0. We'll have to get the length -1 to set our inventory index, to set our pointer to the right number. Okay? Okay, that's a lot to think about, but hopefully you have it. If not, think about it, man. Okay, so if we are sitting at a number greater than 0, then we want to take our inventory index, get our inventory index, and we're going to decrement it. So press -, and click enter on the decrement. So now we lower our inventory index, but when you do something, remember, you have to set the value. So pull out your inventory index, set it, get the data over there, and then let's connect up our signal flow. Okay, let me see if that was all we needed to do. Okay, so we have our inventory indexes set properly. And basically, we need to do the same thing that this is doing over here. But remember how I was talking about, being an efficient programmer and doing all these sort of things? It would be silly for me to write this twice. And you might, let's compile and save. And you might be saying, well, I don't want to have to, I'll just write it again. No big problem. No, it is a big problem. You want to do the same function. You want things to be efficient. So we're going to turn this little thing right here into its own function. So that way it's not only to save the time on rewriting, it's also to make your code clearer. And so anybody who's looking at it will be able to go, oh, okay, he's calling the exact same thing. He's not doing anything different there. And since we're no longer doing anything different, we need to go ahead and make this a function. So to do that, just go ahead and copy all this. I think I could just collapse it to a function. Sometimes it gets a little weird. So I'm going to show you the slow way to do it. Press plus on the function, and we're going to call it set weapon to spawn. Okay? And I can't remember if I copied this. Control C. And you can just double click and it'll bring it back in there. Set weapon to spawn, and then paste that in here like this. And boom. Now you might be going, oh, you're not going to hook up anything off of here. Well, it automatically does that for you. Compile, save all. That's one of the reasons we have a problem and why we had to use macros, is because it automatically makes output pins for whatever weird reason, which I hate. But this will work for right now. Okay. So the signal flow is going to continue. So let's call that one set weapon to spawn. There's our function we just made. And so we no longer need this. Okay, hook up both of these things back in here. You'll be hurting. Set weapon to spawn. Okay, so now that we have this function, we can set weapon to spawn right here as well. All right, and we can get that all in there nice and tidy. So it's calling the same exact thing, and we're going to need to go to our we're actually going to need to go down to, we need to call this again. Okay, so just Control C, Control V. All right, and don't get confused. This is the function we just made. This is the one that links you down here. Okay, and so basically, in the function we just made, we're getting our inventory index and we're setting our weapon to spawn. And basically all this increment and decrement was doing was getting the right inventory index, telling the pointer where it needs to be. Compile, save, file, save all, and let's see what the heck we did. Press play. Okay, and shift F1. Yes. Windows left arrow, or just single click. Okay, let's see what we did. We got two clients here. So we got an AK, AR, submachine gun. So I gotta think of this backwards. AR should be next. AK should be next, and I'm decrementing now. AK, and then we should swing now. If I down my scroll wheel again, we should see the submachine gun. Great. AR, AK. That's right. And then if I'm here, I should increment and go back to my sub. There it is. And then that should go back to the AK. There we go. It looks like we're doing just fine and dandy right here. Let's not get cocky though. So we're submachine gun, AR, AK. That's great. That's working right. Let me go to the client that doesn't have a weapon yet. And we're going to set these animations up. Don't think this is going to be your idle pose, okay? We're just getting the mechanics in here. So let's try and get this order right here so we don't mess it up. AK, AR, submachine gun. And you can pick them up in any order. I'm just doing this because I can't seem to think past the number 3 today, and I'll forget. Okay, so submachine gun. We should be able to go down into our AK, or was it our AR? See, I just told you I couldn't think, and I did it. Shift F1. Okay, let's try this again. Okay, AK, AR, submachine gun. All right, submachine gun, AR, and then there's our AK. Submachine gun, AR, AK. Gotta make the other guy do it too, just so I can show you that it's working. Let's see, we got our AK, AR, submachine gun, AR, AK, submachine gun, AR, AK, submachine gun. I'm decrementing. Now I'm going to increment. We should be at the last thing in our chain, so we should go back to the first weapon we picked up, which was our AK, and there it is. Okay, a little bit of a brain fart there, but now I'm scrolling up and down very quickly, and we will add animations that will delay the weapon change, and you will actually see him pick up the weapon and drop the weapon and do all that sort of stuff. So now the hard work is out of the way. We escape. We look at what we've done, and it's a frickin' mess. So here's what we're going to do. We just got done talking about how Unreal will connect weird outputs to things like this where we don't want anything to happen. So, oops, kick the mic. So I would normally just make this a function, but we can't do that. We can't make this a function and have it operate the same way. At least I don't think so. So we are going to put these into functions, and I named them, I think I gave them decent names when I was running through this. We're going to turn it into a macro, I'm sorry. We'll call it, what did I call it? Yeah, we'll just call it increment inventory. I mean, increment inventory macro. That would be fine. So let's press over here. Increment inventory mac. And you might say, for macro, you might say, well, what's the big deal? Why does it matter what you name it? It's because if you name your stuff right, you should need minimal comments to figure out what's going on in the code. That's the whole idea, is to make your code so it's like you're reading through the variable names. You're like, oh, okay, that's what's going on. You get these vague names and you don't know what's going on. Somebody's going to be reading your code, and especially if you're low on comments, they have no idea what the heck's going on. So let's copy all of this and stop here. We don't want to grab any of the functions we made. Control C, go to your inventory macro, double click on it, increment inventory, I'm sorry. And then control V, okay? And then your input here, just drag this branch up and it'll connect right in there. And don't forget, I did this when I was doing it. Make sure you get both of them into the same output hole right there, okay? The whole reason we're using a macro is because this false would start firing, and we don't want to do that. Even though it might not hurt anything, it would cause extra code to be fired that we don't need. So it would defeat the whole purpose of having this and could cause problems down the road. So increment inventory, use this, compile, save all. Go to your event graph. Let's pull out our increment inventory Mac. Okay. Let's break this. Pop it in here like that. Let's break this. Break links. And I'm right clicking to do that. Grab these two. Well, one's a function, one's a custom event. And let's drag it in here. Look at how much freaking nicer this looks than all this gobbledygook. We're eventually going to delete it, but I always make it a point to make sure everything works before I start deleting crap. So you got your increment inventory. So let's do the decrement inventory macro as well. Max, I keep saying max. F2. Backspace and put a C. Okay, go to your event graph. Make sure you grab the right stuff, which is that. Control C it. Okay, double click on your decrement. Zoom out a little with the scroll wheel, Control V. Hook up your inputs and your outputs, or your input and your outputs. Plug it in there just like that. Whammo. Compile, save, file, save all. Back to your event graph. Let's move this code up here. Let's break this. This is your decrement. Grab it, scroll out, plop it in here. Get your decrement inventory macro. Plop it right there. Okay, and I know it's the same thing we had up there, but could have just copied and pasted, but you get the idea. Plop it right in there. File, save all. You do that much moving around, you're bound to destroy something you needed. So let's press play and check this. Shift F1. Windows left arrow. Okay, let's see if I can remember more than 3 things today. AK, AR, submachine gun. AK, AR, submachine gun. I'm incrementing. Now let's go back the other way. What's next? Do you remember? Submachine gun, AR, and then our AK, and then our submachine gun. AR. Okay, great. It's working. Fantastic. We're on. That was a non-dedicated, or that was a dedicated session. Do a non-dedicated. Select this. Windows over. Select our guy. Get our client. Where is he? Oh yeah. AK. AR. Submachine gun. I'm going to decrement first. AR. AK. Submachine gun. And then, oh, I hit it again. The next one should be submachine gun. Yes. AK. AR. Woo! It's working. So what kind of programmer would we be if we just stopped there? Why stop there? Let's delete this gunk. We don't need it anymore. You can make a comment here if you want. Increment / decrement inventory. Okay. See, now you can see it when you zoom out. Look at that. Nice and big. So if you're out here and you got tons of code, wham, you can see that. You know what's going on. You're good. Look how nice and neat that is. Compile, save, file, save all. Double click here to go where this is going. So anyway, what I was completing my thought here, what kind of programmers would we be if we just left this like this, all out in the open and crazy and stuff? This is when you pick up your weapon. and we set it to the last index. This is a perfect candidate for a function. So you know what? Let's get wild and crazy and experiment with this live. So let's just drag it like this, right click, collapse the function, and hope that that works. We're not going to keep it that name, but I needed something in my notes, and I want to keep it the same. Yeah, so just make sure you have this highlighted over here, F2 it, and just call it set weapon to last index. Now you got to be careful with that collapse to function, because sometimes when you click it, well, first off, you can tell it's moving my stuff around, but sometimes it will do weird things to pins and throw them in weird spots. So you know, make sure that your pins are where they're supposed to be. These things are plugged in the right spot. Compile, save all. Back to our event graph. This would be no different than if you created a new function, copied it and pasted it and dumped it in there, okay, as far as what we've done. But you need to always go back, double check your stuff and make sure it didn't screw it all up. And now look at that. Look at how much more organized we are than we were. I mean, it's so much better. And we got our notes going on. You can organize things a little bit differently, but we did change something. So let's run a dedicated. Shift F1, Windows left arrow, select. Okay. Let's actually go in here. And this was the pickup that we were screwing with, so let's make sure it's good. You also want to make sure you didn't break anything. I only have 2 items. Let's check. Press Q. Yep, I only have 2 items. I didn't grab a submachine gun. There we go. Okay, and we can adjust. We're eventually going to change, the positioning in the hands, so when he does switch, his hands are nice and perfect. We're going to do that with enumerators and all sorts of cool stuff, but right now, our guy, he's picking up weapons. If I could keep the mouse on the dam, there we go. He's good. He's pointing up in the air. He can do all sorts of cool stuff, and we'll fix the cameras and all that. Baby steps, one thing at a time. Don't mind the kids screaming. Let me press escape right here. So, anyway, that's it for now. I got to go tend to something that's going on in the other room. But, we've been talking about all this different programming stuff, and if you really want to make your code really good, if you really want to be an awesome programmer, an Unreal Engine developer, the best thing to do is go out and get yourself a hat like this. I think my programming skills went up by at least 10%. Just by wearing the hat alone. Anyway, that's all for today. Next video, I'm not even sure what we're going to do, but we're going to keep going ahead. I like the comments. I like it when you guys comment. Feel free to ask questions. I'll try to help you. If you go off on your own tangent and start doing things, that's fine. That's great. That's what you should be doing. Make a backup copy, though, of this. Okay, make another copy. And play with that, and then you can always come back to here. It's going to be hard for me to help you if you get, there was somebody who went ahead and he was working on montages and all that sort of stuff, which is awesome. But I couldn't tell exactly where he was at in his stuff because he's doing his own. He jumped ahead, which is fine, but I'm not going to be able to really help you that well with that unless it's a common, non-specific to your project problem. And in that case, you could probably just look it up and find it out. But keep adding comments. If you have questions, I'll try to answer them, especially if they're about this. If you do this and something's not working, first off, make sure you've done it in the correct engine version, because there are slight differences. This shouldn't have any problem, but if you're in the same engine and you're doing all the steps exactly how I'm doing them, it works. I mean, I'm proving it right here. But if you get stuck and you have a question, go ahead and ask. But yeah, comment, like, all that good stuff, and we'll see you on the next one.